Hi.
Hi guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Everyone.
How's everyone doing?
Good. How are you, Arnav?
I'm good.
How about you?
Today was the last day of my school.
Same as me. Tuesday's the last day of school for me. Today was like the last official day, but we still have like some optional work to do.
$13 people in. We'll wait for a few more minutes. While you're waiting, does anybody have any questions?
Today you'll be helping us form our business plan, right?
Today we're going to be going through the entire course, the 7 weeks, and stopping at points in the course where people need more clarification in trying to understand a topic better. So that's plan number 1. Plan number 2 is.
Is there any way that you can give us permission to record the meeting?
You can always record it, yeah, sure.
No, I know, but it says please request record permission from the host.
Tarun, all meetings are recorded and I post videos of every meeting.
Okay.
If you go to the Entrepreneurship channel on Slack, I just posted today the recording of yesterday's class. So every class has been recorded and has been posted. Rishi and the team do a great job. They record everything. So the agenda today is number 1. We'll go through the entire course material from the beginning. We'll pause at points where people need clarifications. And so in a way, you're going to get to rehash the entire course. Number 2, if people have certain topics that they'd like to better understand, then it's time for you to speak up. I received a few of those requests offline on Slack, so I will make sure to cover those. Financials, P&L statement being one, hacker web being another, and a couple more. And so I'll make sure to cover those. Number 3, if you guys have any questions in your mind, this is the time to ask. And then number 4, if we have time, I'd like to go over the IP material, which we were supposed to cover yesterday, but because we covered the business plan template yesterday, we couldn't cover IP. So I'll cover a bit of the IP, pretty much just 3 things. What are patents, what are copyrights, and what are trademarks? Just those 3 things is what you all need to know. And if anybody's interested in more details, then I've already posted the IP presentation on Slack. Feel free to peruse all of the 20 slides that if you so wish. "17 participants. So any questions? Anyone? How many teams? I've counted now 15 teams that have been submitting, 15 teams have been submitting homework. So I would think that at least 15 teams will participate in the Pitch Fest. Maybe a couple will drop out, I don't know. But we'll see, we'll see. Any other questions? When will we decide when will we decide which teams present to the Pitch Fest? So if you have a completed business plan, as in your idea has been converted into business plan, which as we learned yesterday is pretty easy because all you do is convert your homework slot it into the slides and your business plan's ready. If you have a completed business plan, then you will be allowed to present at the Pitch Fest.
And if not, we're not allowed to participate?
I'm sorry?
If we don't have a complete business plan,
Yeah.
we're not allowed to participate?
Or you're allowed to listen in, but not to present your idea. What will you present if you don't have a business plan, right? So for you to be able to present at the Pitch Fest so that the VCs listen to you and then grade you and provide you feedback as to how good your idea is and how viable it is and how fundable it is, then you have to have a business plan, right, Jacob?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Does everyone here have a team? Or text me if you don't have a team. You can private message me if you like. What questions do you guys have? So yesterday we talked about when is the Pitch Fest? It's June 20th. Yesterday I said it's probably 2 p.m. and I was wrong. It's 3 p.m. It's 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Okay, a couple more minutes and I'll get started. Okay, I'm literally going to, well, there is no maximum, Jacob. We are accepting every team that has a completed business plan. So I'm going to start, and I have the first week's presentation up. And the way I plan to run this is I'm going to run through every slide. And if there is a slide where anybody wants more explanation, just unmute yourself and say, hold on, can you explain this? Otherwise, I'll assume that you guys kind of have a handle on it and we can move forward. Once someone stops me, or once I stop at a point where where the people have sent me offline requests, there are a few, as I mentioned, to clarify certain areas. Once I reach that, then I will give the opportunity to a student in this class to unmute themselves and explain, so that if you so wish, you can volunteer and explain that topic. If not, then I will take it on and I will explain the topic and we'll move forward. I want to make this pretty efficient so that we get all of the 7 weeks in we get all the Q&A in, and we get the 3 IP components, patents, trademarks, and copyrights in. I know copyrights and such are very helpful to a couple of teams, including Tarun, your team. We've been discussing copyrights quite a bit, so it'll be a good topic for you guys to get an introduction.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, here we go. We are running, okay? Stop me if you have a question. Otherwise, I'm going to keep running. So week 1, we basically jumped into the concept of who's an entrepreneur. And who's an entrepreneur being anyone who has a business where they invest either time or money or both and bring about revenues and hopefully profits. And anyone who does that is called an entrepreneur, as we learned from this lovely video, from this lovely film. Then we talked about what's creativity and how do you channel your inner creativity. And then we transferred over to basically introspecting within ourselves, trying to uncover what our area of passion is. Many of you called out your passion, many in sports, some in gaming, some in art, some in saving the planet, some in music, etc. And that very first class was pretty helpful in each of you kind of trying to then uncover an idea for a startup. We talked about why is creativity important by a video, and then we talked about some amazing examples of how creativity led to business ideas, which led to multi-hundreds of billions of dollars, reaching $1 trillion of valuation for companies like Google, Apple, and how Steve Jobs changed the world by being radically different. Tesla and how he is turning the auto industry upside down, and not just that, but space travel as well. And then Reed Hastings and what he did with Netflix, and how Netflix has basically put out of business many large, profitable businesses of yesterday, like Blockbuster, and the disruption caused in the media industry by Netflix. And then we talked about how you should always keep in mind doing social good. Social good doesn't really mean that you should have an idea that does entirely social good. Social good also could be like Tom's Shoes, where Tom's basically for every pair of shoe that they sell, give away a pair to an underprivileged child somewhere in the third world. And then basically we then said, how do you channel these facets, these various different values, and bring it together in terms of how passion and problem come together to find an idea that could be a startup. We also talked about how technology purely doesn't make a startup, how there are multiple pieces of the puzzle, and really you have to get all of the pieces together in the right way for a startup to come together. So this puzzle analogy I quite like in terms of how we explain the business plan. Then basically there was additional reading material which we didn't go through class that talked about how is there a formal way of bringing about creativity to ideas? And so if you feel like you can read the materials to do so. Then we talked about the team and the value of the team and the founding team. And we came up with what the titles of the team members of the founding team are: CEO, CTO, CPO, and such. And then therein, we gave you your first homework. The first homework was an individual one. Most of you submitted it. Thank you for that. Those that haven't and still want to, I'm still open to receiving the homework. And lastly, my favorite part of the class, we talked about this term called jugaad. Jugaad is actually a Hindi word, and jugaad shows how people have used creativity to solve day-to-day problems, where without which you would be really in a fix, using a motorbike to pump water when the motor failed, using a hot iron to heat milk in winter, using bottles to make a chandelier, etc., etc. Using one air conditioner for 2 rooms, just some good examples. So that was week one. No one stopped me. I guess people are really aligned on this aspect. Any questions on week one before we go to week two?
What does CPO stand for?
Chief Product Officer. So a technology officer is one that basically builds the technology, and the product officer is the one that basically owns the product and the product roadmap. Okay, week two, another exciting class. We recapped week one, but then we went into an exercise where all of you spoke up and talked about who inspires you. And this was also a part of their homework for that week. And many of you submitted really good write-ups of who inspires you and why. We talked about Marc Zuckerberg, we talked about Jack Dorsey, Elon Musk, etc. And then we talked importantly about leadership and leadership traits. We talked about how you can become a leader. Only if you are a leader can you lead, not just creating and making a startup successful, but also lead people to follow you so that you can build great and big things. And we had a great exercise. We talked about leadership traits. Most of you got it spot on. And then we analyzed this Ogilvy leadership 10 things to look for in a leader, some surprising ones like a sense of humor, some not so surprising ones like charisma and good brains, etc.
What is charisma?
Charisma is the ability to have a personality that inspires people, that makes people look up to you and listen to you. And then in the midst of all of this, we talked about that no one has become successful without the quality of having hard work. Most entrepreneurs, in fact, all entrepreneurs that have been super successful, all of them have this common trait, that they work really hard. And we talked about how if you're passionate about the space, then it does not work. And if you form a startup that is in your area of passion, then it's really, you don't count the hours. Hard work comes naturally because you're passionate about the topic. And then we went into my favorite section. I collect quotes. I have literally a collection of maybe 2,000 plus quotes. And I put out some of my favorite quotes for you guys. Leaders listen more than they speak, according to the Dalai Lama. This picture that shows how ants really make a killing of getting so much work done by teamwork, and how it's all about the team. It's not just about yourself. And I told you that that even in your business plan, VCs will be looking for teamwork, and so good leadership isn't about advancing yourself. Entrepreneurs are risk takers. I love this quote by Reid Hoffman, who founded LinkedIn, and basically it talks about how entrepreneurs have naturally the capability of taking risks. And an entrepreneur is someone who jumps off the cliff and then builds a plane on his way down. And then we talked about Elon and how he put, first of all his money into moving to this country, and then put all his money into PayPal and making that successful. And then after all the money he got from PayPal, he again put all of that money into SpaceX and Tesla with nothing left to even pay for rent. That is the kind of risk that people take. You have to overcome your fears to be able to be successful. And then my favorite sportsman, perseverance, where Michael Jordan talks about how many times he failed. And that is why he became successful, because only when you fail, you learn. And when you learn, you become better. If you are averse to failing, then you will never learn. So that is why he succeeded, and that's how you will succeed. Being strong, etc., etc., etc. And then we cannot have a quote session and not have a quote from one of the greatest leaders the world has ever seen. Both Martin Luther King Jr. as well as Nelson Mandela were very influenced by him, Mahatma Gandhi, and he talks really your values and how your habits leads to your values, and values become your destiny. It's so important to have the right value system. A lot of the values our parents teach us, but most of our values, we basically experience the world and we come out of it from within. And it's important that you always test your values, whether this is what you really stand for. Integrity, when Warren Buffett talks about intelligence and integrity, but if you don't have integrity, he says, don't even bother looking for a person as an entrepreneur. And then last but not the least, social good. I encourage each of you to make sure that social good is ingrained into everything that you do. We talked about kind of bringing this all together with this graphic, and then we had the homework about your favorite entrepreneur. That culminated week 2. Any questions, observations on week 2? So there's a question. Whoa, I missed a bunch of, I was just on a roll. Who is a leader? So all of you are leaders. It's not necessarily just the CEO as the leader, because at the end of the day, you're founding a company as a co-founder and you're a leader in that realm as well. There's a misconception that a leader always has a team and is managing a team. No. A leader is someone who basically steps up, stands up, and takes initiative and says, you know what, I'm going to take the firing because I'll be in the firing line, and I will defend you. And defend you, it could be a team or it could be your co-workers, co-founders. You take leadership into everything that you do. Okay, so that was week 2. We are on a roll here. Let's jump into week 3. Week 3, my favorite class of all 8 classes, where we really start to, now that in the first 2 weeks we had discussed all of the traits and looked at people who've been successful. This is where we start to build our own story for the first time, right? And I love this quote by Bruce Lee, because there is no way you're going to get an easy life, but pray to endure the hard life that you are going to be up against, right? There is no other way. And then we basically then jumped into Marc Zuckerberg and his thinking from the point where he was a student at Harvard to dreaming up what was called the Facebook, to now becoming, as big as Facebook is, with Facebook and WhatsApp and Instagram having over 2 billion users in the world, which is basically, 1 out of 3 people in the world are using Facebook. And think about it, most of those other 2 of the 3 people don't even have a phone. So if they would have a connected phone, they would use Facebook. It's that pervaded into our very being, what Marc Zuckerberg has done. We talked about the hacker way. And I want to pause here because one of you guys pinged me saying that if you could spend some time on the hacker way. So the hacker way basically comes from Marc Zuckerberg's IPO letter. And the IPO letter, I will open it up. I have it open. The IPO letter basically is his manifesto. It is Marc Zuckerberg's it's a cry to the world saying that, look, what I'm going to achieve, right? And
it was also his exit strategy, correct, sir?
Yes, exit as in taking it to IPO, definitely an exit strategy for all of the employees that have worked hard for him, who can now reap value of their work from their shares now being tradable. But also it was also it was a big statement to the world saying that, I'm not done. I'm not done. I'm on a mission. This is not just a company for me. It's a mission. It's my mission to connect everybody in the world with everybody else. And that kind of passion really takes you very, very, very far, right? if you have a passion, you believe in it, and then you work hard for it and you bring it to fruition, is such a big deal. And as a part of the letter, there is a section called the Hacker Way, which is right up here now on your screens, page 4. And the Hacker Way is basically his modus operandi. It is his mechanism of operating that if we imbibe as a part of us doing startups, we have so much to learn, and we have so much that Marc has kind of paved the way for us. And the Hacker Way talks about 5 things. Which is focus on impact. A lot of us run around with our heads chopped off trying to solve things that may not be as important. Focus on the top things that will make an impact. Take them on first, take them on fast. And that's the second principle, which is move really fast. And he says, when people move fast, they always break things. And it's okay. It is okay to fail. But his mantra was fail fast. Don't take years and years or even a year to fail. If you move fast and you break things, you'll learn from your mistakes and you'll move forward. So fail fast is something that I basically, every startup that I mentor, I try to build this motto into them. Be bold. That also is similar to be fast. Be open. Don't be a closed, unless you have massive amount of sharing between the team and lifting each other up, you cannot build great and big things. And then lastly, but important, and many of you latched onto this, is the social good. So when you're building some things big, also build social value from it, right? So those were the 5 tenets of the Hacker Way. I'm getting a weird echo. Whoever's not on mute, please go on mute. I somehow can't, I'm not able to mute everyone. Okay. I have to go and individually mute people. Okay. Trats, this is in some kind of auto running mode. I don't like this. Yeah, and so we talked about the Hacker Way and the importance of the Hacker Way. And then we went on to really, for the first time, introduce the spirit of Silicon Valley and how things get done in Silicon Valley. We talked about how every company is a data company going forward, whether you're in manufacturing or if you're in sports or if you're in arts or whatever it is, data has to be really kind of central to it. Saram, I covered the Hacker Way. Is there any question? Do you have any question? Okay. And then going on into the Silicon Way, the Silicon Valley Way, we talked about how digital disruption has disrupted major, huge industries of the past. Think about the hoteling industry, which is turned upside down on its head with Airbnb, with the taxi and transportation industry with Uber and Lyft, phone companies with Skype, WeChat, and now WhatsApp. And all of these companies, think about it, they own no infrastructure, right? These entities who are now the largest companies own no physical assets. No taxis for Uber, no real estate for Airbnb, no telecom infrastructure, the big billions of dollars of infrastructure that the AT&Ts of the world put in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is very profound how the world has changed, how Silicon Valley has changed the world. And then we talked about VCs and their value and how they are our biggest friends when we are entrepreneurs, because they are the ones who give us the funding to get our company going. And then for the first time, we introduced the business plan, and we talked about the components. And I had this exercise, which I'm glad I did because I got a lot of engagement from all of you guys. With each of the component, we had this food for thought, and you guys were all very participative, and I appreciate that in the respective business plan component. And anyway, the business plan components we'll go through: problem, solution, business model, product and solution, competition, marketing and sales strategy, the team, and then finance, financial models, profit and sales and loss and such.
Can you please go back to the first business plan component slide? Or is it all here? Okay,
You mean this one? Tarun, this is the same as the business plan template, but this one I created special slides so that I could foster kind of engagement with you guys. But the more detailed one is your business plan template, which has all of the components here. Okay, so focus on this. And again, this was early days, right? This was third class, whereas now you guys are much more accomplished in having gone through 7 weeks of the class. And then bringing it all together, this is what makes the business plan, right? These 8 components. And then we talked about analyzing the IPO letter and imbibing 3 traits, which again, you guys all did a phenomenal job. I think this week's homework was the best from all of the teams in terms of how you all took passion in imbibing certain traits. And I was surprised by the quality of all of your work. So thank you for that. Not only was this my favorite week in terms of the class, but also it became my favorite kind of homework class, thanks to you all.
Absolutely, sir. Marc Zuckerberg's IPO letter was very eye-opening in terms of the more real world of business.
Totally. Okay, then any questions on week 3 before we go on to 4?
Oh, yes, sir. Just one question. So how long would it typically take on average for a business to basically open up to VC investment and share process?
Yeah, the answer to that is not fixed. It's very nebulous. A lot of VCs will not invest in ideas, especially in these times after the 2000 dot-com bust and then the 2009 recession. Many VCs don't invest directly in models that have not proved themselves in some way, as in you have some prototype or even a semblance of a product, a beta of some kind, and customer interest, where a customer has shown that, yeah, they're interested in it. And that is why, therefore, what we're going to talk in this session, the alternate sources of investment, like the angel investors, has become very popular, right? The seed round, as we call it, because Series A, B, E are more VC rounds. And because the VCs have shied away. But having said that, I have also seen VCs invest in 2 guys with the business plan written down, nothing else done, no product, nothing, going to VC, and the VC puts in money overnight. I've seen that happen. And conversely, I've seen hundreds of ideas that never got funded for years. I had entrepreneurs work on stuff for 1 or 2 years and they couldn't get funding. So
actually, I have one more question about session 3.
Yeah, go for it, Tarun.
So the component of business.
You're breaking up, Tarun?
I am?
Yeah, repeat your question, please.
Yes. Is the business model the same components as the business plan?
So business plan is the whole thing. It has all of the components: problem statement, what's your product, what's your solution, what's your secret sauce, what's your financial plan, who's your team, what's your marketing and sales strategy, who's the competition, right?
Yeah, okay.
The business model is more confined to the financial aspect of and the product aspect of the business plan. Remember, we talked about the business model where if it's an app, you can have it be ad-based, or you could be subscription-based, where you're charging the consumers, with ad-based, you're not charging the consumer, or it could be a freemium model. So those are more business model-esque topics. Make sense? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So now we're going to jump into week 4, and week 4 got more into kind of the nitty-gritty of incorporating a startup. How do you raise money? What are the various startup terms, etc. Right? So let's jump into it. So if you have an idea, it doesn't necessarily translate to a business we talked about, but you need to basically create a business plan. Successful and repeat entrepreneurs build a business plan in their mind, but all first-time entrepreneurs, I always ask them to build the business plan out. It's just 15 slides or 10 slides, as we looked at it yesterday. And if you complete it and you start things in, automatically it comes out, whether your plan will be viable or not, at least in your head. So never shy away from the business plan. It'll become a part and parcel of your life going forward if you're an entrepreneur. This is what you will eat, breathe, pray, do, right? And again, many of my entrepreneur friends and myself, when we look at an idea, in our mind, automatically the business plan starts to form. My mind has this 10 dimensions that is thinking about, okay, competition, revenue model, potential marketing strategies that will work and not work. And literally when a person in an elevator, and therefore called an elevator pitch, pitches me an idea, I can tell them immediately saying that, look, it's a good idea, but I don't think your marketing strategy will work because I'm already thinking the dimensionality of the business plan, right? I'd like each of you to get to that kind of prowess as you become entrepreneurs. Building a team doing it alone is infeasible. Building momentum, which is get experts in your field to ratify it, very important, right? You might think that's the greatest idea under the earth, but if you call a person who's really a sportsman and you have the sports idea, and that person says, look, you know, I saw this 10 years back in a different form, it didn't work for these reasons, it gives you great ideas and it helps you ratify. And then if all systems are go, if it's all green, then start to build in earnest. Start to basically, first of all, incorporate the company. And we'll do it at Delaware, as we talked about, get the investment from the VCs, and start to run fast and fail fast. So this is an important slide for you guys to imbibe as you become real world entrepreneurs. This slide is one of those take it with you at all times slide. And then we talked about an investor mindset and how Tim Draper thinks. And then we talked about, and we did this video on how do you incorporate, and how do you incorporate a Delaware-based company usually when you do a startup. We talk about the importance of teams and how VCs invest in teams, and we talked about the power of teams in a video. Then we talked about what makes startups successful, and there is this concept called exit, which is either an IPO or an acquisition. And then without an exit, basically all of your shares in any company are not traded in real place, so it's all paper money. We talked about how to succeed, some important traits. My favorite one being get ramen profitable. Ramen being, most entrepreneurs have a small kitchenette in their startups where they rent space to run a startup, and it's usually filled with ramen because it costs 15 cents a box to eat, and you don't want to waste your money all in food. We talked about startup terms and what they mean, particularly important terms like stealth round. We talked about what a valuation of a company is. We talked about pivot. We talked about pre-money and post-money valuation. I'm running. Unless anybody has questions, feel free to interject. And then I had an FAQ, which I converted into a document, and a lot of people are still asking me questions and not reading the FAQ. I will point to the FAQ right now. That document is placed, this one is placed in your, in the pinned items in the channel. And this has this has a lot of questions that you've asked me that I keep converting and putting into an FAQ. For example, someone asked me today, can a business plan be submitted individually? I don't have a team, I'm by myself. And the answer is no. I'm allowing teams of 2, but not 1. And I'm allowing teams of 2 only for those that did have a team of 3 where 1 person had to leave for some reason. I'm not allowing you to form a new team with 2. Is an app required for the Pitch Fest? Someone asked me that today. Actually, a few people have asked me that in the last 2 weeks. And the answer is, Pradhiman, you want to read the answer? Hello?
No.
Sorry, sir. We missed that question.
The question is an app or product required for the Pitch Fest?
Oh, that was the question I also asked you this morning. I remember. Correct.
There's a reason
Can I explain or?
yeah, whoever.
Yeah, I think you don't have to necessarily do it, but a
Yeah,
prototype
it's not required. It's not required.
it's not required, but a prototype version is acceptable. And it's actually a very good idea to have a visual prototype.
Or a wireframe, which is in
Correct.
power. So you have an extra slide that basically shows a couple of wireframes.
Mm-hmm.
So that is question number 3 in the FAQ for whoever is struggling. Please go and read these FAQs if you're so interested. It has a bunch of answers. Okay. So that was week 4. We're on a roll. Any questions on 4? I know some people asked me if I could cover a few of the terms, you know, the jargon slide. I had a few people who said, can you cover some of these in the final session? So let me pull that slide up to see if anybody has a specific question. You can ask, and I will have a student basically volunteer and answer, and only one per student. No? No one?
Wait, what do you want us to volunteer?
I'm asking
Volunteers, basically.
Oh, like 1 person per term?
No, I'm asking if anybody has a question on any of these terms they don't understand, they can ask.
And if they do, we would volunteer. Yeah, correct.
Oh yeah, actually I do have 1 question.
Okay.
What is Series ABC?
Who wants to answer it?
May I, sir?
Go for it.
So Series ABC essentially is that you will never only complete 1 round of funding with the VCs. Every round of funding will go through a maximum of 8 of 10 rounds until finally you get like correct amount of funding, or you get the essential funding for your company to begin or run. So Series ABC is basically every single round of funding you go through with the investors and the VCs.
Yes, spot on, Pradyum. Thank you. When VCs invest in you for the first time, and you get a check that's called the Series A, the second round of funding you raise is Series B, etc. Most companies need 3-4 rounds of funding before they can exit. It's not a rule of thumb, but most. Many companies, like one of the companies I work for, we raised over $100 million in funding. And we ended up raising 5 rounds of funding before we sold the company to BlackBerry, as I mentioned to you at one of the first classes.
What are angel round and stealth mode?
Okay. Who wants to take angel
I would
round?
like to answer, please.
Go for
Angel
it,
round.
Tharoor.
So angel round is when necessarily get funding from a VC, but you get funding from somebody who has a lot of money, who's either like closely related to you or lives near you, or somebody who you just know. So it's not funding from a VC, it's funding from anybody who has a reasonable amount of money.
Yeah,
That's what
spot
I
on.
thought.
Spot on, Tarun. Thank you. Angel round is exactly that. There's an angel who wants to give you money to get started. Usually, an angel round usually happens before Series A. And another word for it is the seed round. And seed round is basically, you know, how you have a seed and it grows into a plant, to a tree. So that's the angel round, where it is a private party giving you money. It could be also your parents. It could be your relatives, or it could be an actual investor. Like I do angel investing myself. So I'll invest in companies by myself, and I don't necessarily know the founders. What is stealth mode? Who wants to answer stealth mode? No one? So a lot of times, a company that has an idea doesn't want to come out with the idea, and they want to keep it secretive because they think if they come out with the idea, then people will steal the idea and then they will build their own product. Or sometimes they think that there are established companies like a Facebook or Google, and they might steal the idea and have their teams work on it. So a lot of times startups don't publish what they're doing. And when you are in that secretive mode, it's called the stealth mode of a startup. What's an exit? Exit is this, right? So when you start a company and you raise a couple of rounds of funding, and you either list the company and take it public, as in the stock gets traded on Wall Street, or someone acquires you, or you get merged into another company, that's called an exit event. It's deemed to be a successful, it's deemed to be that the startup has now achieved success. Got it? Okay. Let's go to week 5 now.
Wait, could you please just go to like the homework slide for week 4 if there's any?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Pick 1 or 2 components of business plan. By the way, week 4, for those interested, I love these slides. At the end, it has what I call self-reading material, which is real life. First of all, how to start a startup. What are the key steps? This is the 1, 2, 3, 4 slide, if you remember, but a little bit more detailed than the 1, 2, 3, 4 that I put together. Well, that's more verbose. This is more pictorial. But then there are real life examples. How Angry Birds got started, how Pinterest got started, how Instagram got started, and how Airbnb got started. So if you guys want to go through history and not want to read a book about it in one slide, these pictograms capture, and these are my favorite slides, again, because it just puts it out there in a very succinct manner and gives you kind of the whole story in one slide. Okay. Week 5. Week 5 was how to really measure success. And it was all about metrics. It was all about financials. It was all about the 2 core equations. So those 2 core equations are profit is equal to revenue minus costs. Cost could be direct or indirect costs. And then valuation of a company is number of shares in the company times value of each share. So for example, today, if you go and look at it, Google's share price was 1438.39. And if you look at the valuation, it's close to what, $850 billion. So now you know how many shares they have outstanding, right? So the equation comes to light very well by this equation. We talked about 2 financial statements, the profit and loss statement and the balance sheet. The profit and loss statement being basically looking at that first equation, which is how do you determine profit, and how enterprises, how companies need to every quarter publish a P&L statement, which basically shows how much profit or loss they made every quarter. And balance sheet is basically the second equation, which is what is the value of your company, and therefore basically all your assets and your liabilities listed in the balance sheet. And again, all public companies are required by the Securities and Exchanges Commission, SEC as they're called, to publish quarterly statements, these two statements. It's a requirement by law. And then we went into financials, and we talked about, we used a team creating an app as an example for the rest of this week's slides that I made. And basically, in that app, we walked through all of the potential financial touch points, and so, in this case, it was sizing the market opportunity, and then we went into revenue model options, also called business model. Someone asked a question, and so we discussed some example models. Your app could be free, it could be freemium, it could be a paid app, it could have in-app purchases, it could have paywalls, which is a subscription model, that it could have incentivized advertising. We also talked about cost drivers, because not only about making money from sales, but also you'll have to incur a lot of costs. And so we talked about thinking about both direct and indirect costs, and we talked about costs even as esoteric as cooling, air conditioning, and electricity bills as a part of your costs, but also other major line items such as legal, administrative, sales and marketing fees, etc. Then we had two videos, and if you don't understand these two statements, the profit and loss and balance, these are very short videos, and the slides at the top. Every one of my videos, I have posted the link. So please link to these videos if you don't understand the P&L or the balance sheet, and you will see the videos. We talked about different types of funding. In the last class, we talked about angel funding and VC, A, B, C, D rounds. You could also take a loan, or there are other ways to do it. And we talked about that. We talked about valuation, pre-money and post-money valuation, balance sheet, obviously. And then we talked about some funky financial terms you will come across as a part of building a startup.
What's bootstrapping?
Bootstrapping is when you put your own money. You don't, suppose you're in stealth mode, or you don't, and you've got enough money and you don't want to go to VCs and dilute your company. A lot of founders put their own money and build a startup, and that's called bootstrapping.
Thanks.
Okay. We talked about hockey stick curve. We won't talk about it, and then we talked about a very interesting concept called unicorns. So unicorns is a formal name for any company that is valued over $1 billion that has not exited, right? So remember, an exit event is either going public or being sold. So at the point of publishing, these companies were the top unicorns in the world, and there are a total of 465 unicorns as of April 2020. If you look at it, ByteDance, who knows ByteDance? Can someone tell me what ByteDance is? Can someone tell me what TikTok is?
Yes.
Okay, so ByteDance owns TikTok, correct? They have a similar app in China, but it's a Chinese company. And TikTok has now become the fastest growing app, even faster than Facebook in the world in terms of downloads and installs. It is a rage amongst your age crowd, this class, and it shows that they have a $75 billion valuation. Entities like SpaceX, which Elon Musk has not taken public yet, or DoorDash, or Wish, each of these things you guys use are all unicorns. And interesting learning in unicorns. And then we talked about there are two approaches to financial projections. And I want to pause on this slide a little bit because I had people asking me if they can help. So there are two ways when you have that finance slide in your business plan. There are two ways by which you can build a financial projection, right? Let me bring up that business plan template. And And if you remember from yesterday, the financial slide, right? This one. So if you remember, as a part of the financial projections, you are required to look at what you will earn. So what your sales will be. Shoot, the pause button again. What your sales will be for the first year, the second year, and the third year. So you have to project. You have to forecast. So you, in your mind, you're going to go, look, I have an app, and I think in the first year I'm going to sell, 10,000 apps, and I'm going to charge $1 for it. So my first year revenue would be $10,000. But then you say, look, I have a hockey stick curve. Second, third year, I'll sell 1 million and then 10 million. And so then your revenue becomes 1 million and 10 million for second and third year. Then you look at your cost and you start putting your costs here, right? The cost of goods sold, the R&D, etc. And then based on this factors, you look at your profit, which is EBIT. I need to change this and make it more generic. I will change it. I apologize. I will change because this is the same slides I use with actual founders who start companies. So I apologize. I need to change this one. The EBIT slide is more profit, and then the cash flow is how much free money you generated for the year. So here, there are two ways of forecasting this. Was there a question?
So cash flow is like how much money in total, and EBIT is like your revenue, your profit.
Your profit, correct. EBIT is profit, and then revenue is your sales, and then the rest of the 4 lines are costs, right? And I will simplify it and send it to you guys. So now, how do you come up with these forecasts, right? How do you come up with this? And some people have already come to me and I've helped them put together forecasts. So there are 2 ways to do it, right? Let me blow this up. So one is what we call the top-down approach. So in the same 3 years, you estimate what the market size is, right? So think about you're in a market where the market size is $1 billion. And then you estimate the number of competitors. So think, I think that we have 5 legitimate competitors. So analyze your strengths in the long term and you say, what kind of market share can you get in 5 years or 3 years? And if your answer is, if we do really well and we launch a product, we can probably get 20% of market share. So remember, the market was $1 billion. And if you are able to get 20% market share, that means you're going to be able to make $200 million, right? So then start from there and then work backwards. So now your 5th year will show $200 million. Your 4th year, you can start estimating backwards, will be $100 million, and then $50 million, and then $20 million, and $1 million, right? That gives you a 5-year forecast, and you've just achieved a top-down approach to doing so. The other approach is start the other way around. So start from the first year, right? And from the very first year, you can say, look, we're going to sell hard and we're going to be able to sell 10,000 apps in the first year. And then in the second year, we'll see a bigger lift and we'll be able to sell 1 million apps. And then third year onwards, we will see a 20% growth year over year. So now what you've done is you have a bottoms up approach. And then once you have that number of apps, you can then convert it into expected revenue from each app. Say it's $1. And then now you have your first year $10,000, second year $1 million, third year $2 million, whatever, as your bottom up approach to building this forecast. This forecast. So I promised you guys that I will cover it this slide. Let's spend a little time more if anybody has questions on how to build a financial projection. Most VCs prefer a bottoms-up approach, I'll tell you that, because most top-down approaches are more pie in the sky. And most of my VC friends, when they see top-down approaches, they usually end up smirking and giving me feedback in the end saying that, look, your guy is smoking something. So I would prefer you develop a bottoms-up approach. But I've had a couple of teams develop top-down approaches, and that was fine. They did a good job. I help them as a part of their homework. Any questions? Okay. Okay, so that was week 5, and Tarun, for you, the homework was describe in 2 to 3 bullets your financial plan.
Wait for me.
Yep, because you asked me to go to the homework page for each slide, right?
Oh yeah, thanks.
We're still in the process, sir, of getting the financial plan and marketing plan. I hope that's okay with you.
Yeah, no worries. You'll still be in the process, I guarantee you, even 2 weeks from now.
We're constantly pivoting our structure and modifying our content, just as you suggested, sir.
Not to worry. Not to worry. Okay, then we jump into week 6, which was a few of you wrote to me and said that this was really good session, which is all about marketing, which is not about only presenting your startup to VCs, but also how you will build the marketing strategy for your company. And it's also, and it was not just about building a marketing strategy. It was also about what are good presentation skills that you should have as a person. So this was generic life lessons class as well. So jumping into it, this concept of marketing and why it's important. Why do we do marketing? To basically make sure people know about you and your company. What are the 7 pillars of a marketing strategy? And then we talked about the 4 Ps and the importance of the 4 Ps. The 4 Ps being product, price, place, and promotion. And we talked about how if you can attack these 4 Ps, you have really, lo and behold, a great marketing plan already formed, a marketing strategy already formed, and then add to that the other dimension, in this 2-dimensional problem, which is who is your target market. And if you have also the 4 Ps and target market, now you have a completed marketing plan. And that's what you need to put together in basically one slide in the business plan template. And this is the video which talks about the 4 Ps. Again, the link is in the slide if you want to go review it. And then we talked about the target market and we talked about demographics and psychographics and behavioral and geographic aspects of it. And then we talk about the customer revenue lifecycle and the value of a customer. There's a question. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Surya. Surya is commenting that top-down approaches are generally more pie in the sky. Bottom-up approaches are more realistic. Thank you. And then the importance of customer research. And this is a big lesson, this graphic on the right side, this is a big lesson in user experience. Someone designed a great path, but no one traverses that path. And the lesson here is as you build an app or you build a service or you build any product, your customers will tell you how they are using the product. And it is those that build capabilities that morph to provide the customers easier, faster, better access to the features than convoluted ones. This graphic reminds me of the old age of IBM and how they build products, because IBM built products that basically expected consumers to behave in a certain way. But the new age of products like Facebook and Instagram are built basically to align with massive personalization, where people can get very quickly to what they want to use rather than have 5, 6, 7 clicks to get to a feature, right? And that's a big no-no in today's day and world. And then we jumped into how you guys can become effective presenters, not only on pitch day, but in life. And we talked about how planning and why planning is so important. You have to think about your audience. You have to build an outline, the top-down picture, and then you have to execute and build very simple presentations, which is not too verbose. Always try to put very less verbiage. Make sure that you don't read your slides. Make sure you don't fill your presentations with a lot of verbiage, and put a lot of pictures. We talked about how to pitch for funding, just a simple thing, and then the homework was to list how you will market your startup. That's it. That wraps up basically all of our class activity to date, because yesterday we pretty much spent the entire time going through the business plan template, right? Now I will go through the business plan template again. If anyone has any questions, please raise it now. But before I do that, any questions on week 6? Okay. Do you guys want me to talk about IP, at least the 3 things we talked about, patents, trademarks, and copyright really quickly? Or do you need help in the business plan template at the moment? I want to get you guys done in 5 minutes. 5 more minutes, Nidhi. Okay. Since we did the business plan template yesterday, and since we'll be doing it again next week, let's do IP and 3 slides on the IP. So IP, and please, I've posted these slides. So IP is very important because in Silicon Valley, most startups are technocentric startups. Most startups basically work on the principle of having unique technology, which makes good products, and if you market it and sell it well, it makes successful companies. But IP is such an important part that you have to always focus on guarding what you have developed. So really, if you look at it, IP comes in multiple forms. And I'm skipping. IP comes in various forms, but at the end of the day, at this class, what would be good for you to take away is that it has 4 major components: patents, trademarks, trade secrets, and copyrights. And there are a couple of teams where we've been talking about copyrights quite a bit, particularly the music team with Tarun, because these guys have been rightfully so, and I've been very impressed, really taking into consideration copyrights and licensing and those kind of important aspects of a music service. So jumping in, again, I will take 1 minute per slide. These are the types of intellectual property, and each one of these kind of slot into one of these 4. So I will let you at your free time read up a little bit more here. But what's a trademark? A trademark is basically a mark that's a distinctive name. It could be a logo, or it could be a sign of a good or service. It is basically saying that, look, you think you've come up with an ingenious, say, name, and you want to trademark it so that no one else uses it, right? It could be also a logo, like the swoosh Nike logo, that you don't want someone to use it, and you trademark it. So if you look at this, a trademark, in this case, it could be the name. The Coca-Cola is a trademark. It could be a logo like the swoosh from Nike. It could be a symbol like an M inverted or an M, which is McDonald's. It could be a slogan like McDonald's has "I'm loving it," or it could be any of the other things. Guess what? Coca-Cola's bottle, the shape of it is trademarked. So PepsiCo cannot launch a bottle that looks like a Coca-Cola bottle, right? Very simple. So you trademark it, and then you own the rights to it. What are trade secrets? A trade secret is any practice or a process where you think that you have, that you get competitive advantage, that you don't want to share. So you want to keep it a secret, and it's basically a trade secret. So if you go back to Coca-Cola, no one today knows, apart from a few people within Coca-Cola company, what really goes into the cola. No one knows it. It's a trade secret. It's been a trade secret for what, 100 years or 80 odd years, whatever long Coca-Cola has been in business. So that's a trade secret where it's how they do business. It's a certain process. It's a certain recipe in this case, and they want to keep it a secret. What's a copyright? A copyright is basically a bundle of rights where it is mostly used for literary or artistic works, where the creator owns the rights, where if anybody wants to use what they have created, they have to come and license it. Very simple. And therefore, copyrights are more attuned towards literary and artistic work. For example, songs. The rights to songs belong to the artist as well as to the recording studio that represents the artist. And you have to go to either one of them to get a license if you want to reuse it. And it could, even for radio, its licensing is required. Okay. Examples of copyright where it could cover, please read up. It could be books, plays, poems, sculptures, dolls, songs, obviously, etc. Patent. Patent is the most important part of IP thing. A patent is basically an exclusive right granted for an invention. So if you think you've invented something new, it could be a product or it could be a process that makes a product. Either a process or a product, or in this case, technology of the product, or something that offers a new technical solution to a problem, which is also a process, are patentable. And you file a patent, and you generally get awarded a patent for 20 years, and you have to file patents in multiple countries. You don't get a global patent, you get a country-by-country patent. For example, I have 12 patents, and many of my patents are also global patents. My patents are mostly in the AI field, where I've invented new mechanisms of how AI is used for building mostly media and advertising products and retail products. So those are my patents. So here is an example of a patent. There's a guy who patented for a can how to use the ring pull thing. And given for 20 years, this person has a patent, anybody who licenses it pays 1/10 of a penny, 1/10 of a penny to this person who patented it. And so this inventor earns, he's a British guy, 148,000 pounds a day. And think about 148,000 pounds being about what? $170,000 a day, which is how many million a month, and how many, due to the math. So this is the value of patents. And then the rest of the slides talk about how you file a patent, what is required, some case studies, a checklist. And that is it. That is the main thing. If at all you remember something from week 7 on IP, remember what are patents, copyrights, trademarks, and trade secrets, and you are golden. Okay, any questions? Any parting comments? Sorry, I went long, but I thought this class was useful in terms of revisiting the entire course. Someone asked a question, can McDonald's trademark the song? Yes, it already would be trademarked. I can guarantee you that. The tune ta-da-da-da-da would also be trademarked. No one can, that McDonald's tune at the end is also trademarked. Any questions? Any observations? Any suggestions? Was this class useful? We have a very quiet crowd today. Mateo asks, is it possible to trademark something natural, for example, wood? So no. Something that's already out there that you have not invented or come up with. If you invented, it's a patent, or come up with, as in a slogan or a logo, then it's not trademarkable nor patentable. Okay, I guess we have a very quiet crowd today. Was this class useful? Padma asks, what happens to the patent after 20 years? After 20 years, it goes into what's called the general access, and anybody can develop and monetize it. So for example, usually drugs have patents around it. Hydrochloroquine, which our president is touting as a cure for coronavirus, it's over 20 years old, so now anybody can build it. In fact, a couple of companies in India have gotten the contract to make it and supply it to all of the US. So that's a patent that was there for 20 years but has now expired. Okay, I'm ready to call it a wrap for today. Thank you all. I hope this was useful. Many of you were asking for this, so I hope this kind of gets you caught up. Design of a house. Yes, arguably it could be patented if there is a certain new design. Certainly if there's something unique in terms of how you're going to build it, some new material or something, that's certainly definitely patentable. Okay, I'm gonna call it a wrap. Thank you all, and we will see you next Thursday. Next Thursday's class will be basically building on and helping each of you build your business plan. So those that will have pieces ready, please come next week to start presenting. We will use some live examples from previous classes. We'll also use live examples from your own business plan that we'll start working on next week. Thank you all.